All right, welcome everyone to tonight's meeting of the Clyde Sukeforth chapter of SABR. I am Bruce McClure, the chapter chair, and we always hold our meetings in conjunction with the Gardner-Waterman chapter of SABR in Vermont, Dr. Clayton Truder, chair. Now, a couple of things to go over before we get started. We've got a couple of in-person events already scheduled for this summer. Friday, May 30th, we're going to the Nashua Silver Knights game. It's our first chapter social event, community outreach event of 2025, and you're invited if you're in the area. We'll be meeting in the parking lot at historic Holman Stadium at 4:30 to set up our table and display for the 6:03 game, answering fans' questions before, during, and after the game. And it's a fireworks night too, so that's a little bonus. And not to be outdone, we've got our second event scheduled for Friday, July 25th, where we're going to do it all over again in Delta Dental Stadium in Manchester, New Hampshire for the Eastern League tilt between the Fisher Cats and the Hartford Yard Goats. We'll meet in their parking lot adjacent to the ballpark at 5 p.m. to set up our table and display for the 6:35 start, doing the same thing we did in Nashua for the fans before, during, and after the game. This is also a fireworks night, so another bonus. Life is good. Email me if you have any questions or you plan on attending, but stay tuned. I got an email just before tonight's Zoom. We're going to be able to plan some more great in-person events with some of the local baseball teams in the area, so watch your email. There's more coming out. Do you have friends or family members who would love SABR? Now is the time to encourage them to join as we kick off the SABR 500 Club membership drive. The SABR 500 Club is a referral-based membership drive with a goal of welcoming over 500 new SABR members now through April 30th. New members who sign up for an annual or multi-year membership during the referral period will receive a custom baseball card set featuring SABR Rucker archive images of members of the 500 Home Run Club. Current members who refer 3 or more new members during the drive, regardless of membership type, will receive their choice of a card set or a SABR logo lapel pin. For more information, go to sabr.org/500club or email me for more details. All right. On with our feature presentation. Here we go. I've been waiting for this one. This one's going to be good. Like most of you, tonight's presenter grew up a big baseball fan. As a high schooler, she is her school's varsity baseball manager and also loves working for her local AAA team, the Round Rock Express. After joining SABR a few years ago, she was inspired by all she was learning about statistical research and decided to take matters into her own hands to answer one of baseball's age-old questions once and for all. Which is worse, a leadoff walk or a leadoff single? Why that question? Because in Bailey's family, a leadoff walk was treated as a sacrilege, perhaps the most agonizing start to an inning. But is a leadoff walk actually the worst outcome, or is that a strategic choice? Is it worse than a leadoff single, which actually produces a higher run total in an inning? Using data from Baseball Savant and StatCast to cross-reference innings beginning with a leadoff walk or single with the corresponding box scores for runs in those innings, and following that, unifying the data in a form that is queryable by inning, pitcher, and team, Bailey finally found the answer. Through research, she was taken through a secondary journey addressing how to intertwine baseball research with the larger concept of baseball ethics and where statistics belong in the sport as a catalyst for learning and improvement rather than an apparatus to do jobs for us. Award-winning SABR member Bailey Hall is a high school senior from Austin, Texas. She is above all else a Cubs fan, God bless her, but secondly, an Astros fan and overall baseball enthusiast to boot. In her free time, she plays volleyball and loves school, particularly math and history. Bailey is particularly interested in the history of baseball and its role in American culture. As she begins her lifelong journey of being a baseball fan, she is discovering the nuances of sabermetrics and has enjoyed researching and learning how statistics fit into baseball as it attempts to evolve with this new era of technology. Wow, that was a mouthful. Bailey Hall, welcome to Northern New England. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. That was like one of the best introductions I think I've ever heard. So
Oh
thank
man, I
you for that.
stumbled too many times. Thanks. You're way too kind.
I felt
It's
really
all yours. I'm
special
getting out of
when
your
you
way.
did. Okay, well, I'm just gonna share my screen really quick. So everybody let me know if you guys can see what I'm sharing. Hold on, just give me 1 second. Let's see here. Okay. Go. Okay. Hopefully this is working for everybody. Let me know if it's not.
Perfect.
Still loading. Okay. So yeah, I don't know really how to follow that introduction. That was a pretty good one. But hello everybody. My name is Bailey Hall, and I'm a high school senior from Austin, Texas. And my whole family is a huge baseball fan. I've been a baseball fan my whole life, basically. My parents actually met at a Cubs game. That was their first date. So, that's kind of like it was kind of in my blood to become a baseball fan. And today I want to share with you guys how I stumbled upon probably the most remarkable weekend and moments of my life. And it all started as most amazing things do, sitting on my couch watching a baseball game with my dad. So this is by statistical analysis of leadoff walks versus leadoff singles and which is worse. So I don't know about you guys, but for me, when I'm watching baseball or when I'm thinking about baseball, I really can't think about it without the numbers and the statistics and all the analytics and everything that comes along with the game. It's not just a sport, but it's a pastime and it's something more than just a mere sport, right? It's something intertwined with numbers to create like basically the best thing ever. And so I think a quote that really captured that for me was by John M. Culkin, who was a reporter and a critic for the New York Times in the 1970s. And he kind of illustrates this dichotomy perfectly by saying, baseball couldn't survive without all the statistical appurtenances involved in calculating pitching, hitting, and fielding percentages. Some people could do without the game as long as they got the box scores. And for me, I think that's totally true. I mean, you guys can give me your opinions, but the box scores are like one of the best things about baseball. The stats are everything. And I have been a long advocate of not allowing statistics to overshadow the game itself, right? I mean, that's kind of like the baseball purist in all of us. We don't want to see the stats run the game and take away the wisdom of the coaches and the players and the intuition and the things that make it so amazing. But I think it's also important to know where stats really fit in the game, right? I mean, they have a place somewhere because they've been there since the beginning, and they can really enhance the game. It makes it more fun to watch. You can talk about it for hours and hours after the game because you have all these statistics to work with it. And so, again, as I said, it's kind of this balancing act, right? Where does wisdom and intuition fall, and where does statistics and numbers fall? So, as I continued to read about stats from the game that I love, my tenuous relationship with statistics was kind of growing, and I really thought that I needed to explore a different part of it. And I'd always come back to one conclusion. The numbers allowed us to keep talking about the game we love. It brings people together. And that's why we can always argue about things like, why do the Yankees always win? Why do the Cubs always lose? And things like that. But what had become clear to me was that the reason that baseball nerds like us are scared of statistics taking over the game is because we really don't know how they come to be, right? I mean, we see all these numbers on a page and stuff like that, but we don't actually know how they're calculated, and we don't know how to get from step one to step final, right? Um, and I mean, for me, the only like statistical things that I've ever been exposed to is in high school in my stats class. And rarely are you just looking at like a raw set of data in front of you. Usually it's some cherry-picked, clean data set that you don't have to analyze, you just read very clearly. And I think that's one of the greatest mistakes that baseball has made, not helping the fans understand how to get from point A to point B. So for me, I really thought that I needed to know the true place that statistics have in baseball, and to do that, I had to derive them for myself. I needed to know what all the statisticians and the people in the front office are always doing and how they find the numbers. I know how to watch a baseball game very well, as I'm sure most of us do, and I love to read articles about statistics and stuff like that. But again, I didn't know how to get from the beginning to the end myself. So I continued to marinate with the idea of my own analytics project. And by the end of the 2023 season and the postseason, was particularly stressful as an Astros fan. So I had a lot of baseball things on my mind. But luckily the Cubs usually never cause me any stress in the postseason because they never make it. So I only have to worry about one of my teams in October. So I can count on that. But later in the season, I was listening to my family and my dad in particular get really upset about the things that were happening in baseball. And one thing that was really bothering him was when there would be a leadoff walk. If there's one thing that my dad hates most in the entire world, it is a leadoff walk. And this was not a new point of contention. I mean, we've all heard this growing up around baseball. Like the dreaded leadoff walk is like the worst way to start an inning, right? I mean, it's been a torturous event forever, but I always thought that was weird. Like, obviously, it's not ideal, but what's the difference between a leadoff walk and a leadoff single? So I started to ask my parents, my grandparents, everyone I know who likes baseball, and they all agreed. They all said that a leadoff walk was far worse than a leadoff single. And I even reached out to like basically the two coolest people I know, Larry Durker and Keith Hernandez, to see if they also held this same opinion. They've obviously been very close to the game for their entire career, and they agreed as well. They said that a leadoff walk really shakes the pitcher and gets the other team rallied more than a leadoff single. So aside from just, fangirling that they had even answered me, I was really starting to think, okay, like everybody thinks that a leadoff walk is worse than a leadoff single. But is that actually true? I mean, does the data actually suggest that? So my question was, is it actually statistically worse to give up a leadoff walk rather than a leadoff single? So again, after the 2023 ALCS, when as an Astros fan, I had a lot more time on my hands, I realized this was the perfect solution to my problem, right? If I could figure out a way to do a statistical analysis of scoring totals from innings starting with a leadoff walk and a leadoff single, not only could I derive the statistics myself and really figure out how they work in baseball, but I could also prove my dad wrong, which is a pretty good idea, in my opinion. So I put this into action, right? Because how hard can it be? Wrong. I was very wrong about that. It was extremely difficult. Really makes you respect how much the statisticians are doing in baseball. And, I'd really never done anything data analytics related prior to that. I mean, both of my parents are computer scientists. So the obvious choice for me was to not want to do computer science at all. So this project was different for me. And that was exciting, but it was also really hard. So what I realized is that for me, if baseball is involved, I can do things that I don't necessarily love, and they turn into things that I love, which is exactly what happened with this analytics project. So step one was to map out the data that I would even need to collect to begin the analysis. At its most basic level, I would basically need leadoff walks, the totals of leadoff walks from the 2008 to the 2023 season. And the reason that it's these years is because the statistics are advancing very quickly, and they didn't have this data before 2008, which is pretty crazy how far we've come in such a short amount of time. But I mean, ideally, I would love to do it for longer periods of time, but at the moment, given the data we have, it's going to be 2008 to 2023. So yeah, I have found totals for every leadoff single and every leadoff walk, their respective box scores for how the inning ended, and then that would lead me to my answer. So I thought when I, mapped this out, I was going to search it up into Google, and exactly what I was looking for was going to come up. I was going to be like, data set for leadoff singles and leadoff walks, which is not at all what happened, as you might imagine. And my parents were laughing at me because they thought it was going to be that easy. But with the help of a lot of my fellow SABR members and my parents as well, I was able to find two gigantic data sets that had basically what I needed, but they were super raw. It was very uncleaned data, and I had very little background knowledge on how to clean it. So it took a long time. It took a lot of Googling around, trying to figure out how to deal with all of it. And it was a learning experience for sure. I really thought it was going to take less time than it did. But the moral of the story is that, it turned out to be more difficult, but it was also more fulfilling in the end. I first started to like manually look things up, and then I realized that was not going to work. So I was going to have to face my fear of computer science. And it took hours of data manipulation, but finally I felt like, first of all, I'd conquered one of my fears, and I now had the answer to my question. So which is actually worse, a leadoff walk or a leadoff single? So first I want to talk a little bit about, what it means to be statistically significant. So there's lots of different ways that you can determine it, and it's kind of dependent on the topic that you're talking about. But from my statistics class in high school, it was basically decided for this project that if there's a 5% difference, that correlates to statistical significance. So that's generally what most statisticians use, especially in baseball. And, I think it's important to talk about what that really means, because 5% to a lot of people might not seem like a lot. But a 5% difference in batting average is the difference between a 285 batting average and a 300 batting average. Obviously, we all know that is a big difference. Same with ERA. I mean, that's the difference between a 3.8 and a 4.0. That's a big difference, right? So in a game like baseball that's so involved with the numbers, 5% really can be a big difference. So with that in mind, the average runs scored in an inning starting with a leadoff walk from 2008 to 2023 was 0.94 runs, and the average runs scored off of an inning starting with a leadoff single is 0.93 runs. So as we can all see, that's pretty much exactly the same, right? So that's disproving what everybody said. I'd finally done it. I'd proved my dad wrong. He was very proud of me, even though he was wrong. I even proved Keith Hernandez wrong, which was like really, really cool. And then I realized that this was just one bigger picture statistic, right? I mean, there's so many different ways to filter the data and figure out what this can really mean in a deeper way. So I started to filter it by inning, by pitcher, by team, all these interesting things to see if I could find any like cool differences. And I definitely did. So I first want to look at a chart that is of leadoff walks and leadoff singles scoring outcomes by inning. So if you look at it, the red columns are leadoff walks and the white ones are leadoff singles. And I thought what was really interesting is that in the ninth inning, which is the time when a leadoff walk is arguably the most unwanted, there is about a 6% difference in scoring outcomes between a leadoff walk and a leadoff single. And a leadoff single is far worse. So when everybody's yelling about leadoff walks in the ninth inning, they maybe shouldn't be, and maybe they should be looking out for leadoff singles. And also you can really see the influence of the ghost runner in the post or in like the innings after the ninth inning. So like the 10th and 11th leadoff singles are much more significant, obviously, because of the ghost runner, which was really interesting because the changes implemented in 2020 actually make a huge difference in a lot of this data. So it kind of shows like maybe Major League Baseball was right in implementing some of those. So yeah, after 2020, when the ghost runner was implemented, leadoff walks or leadoff singles were 11% better than leadoff walks, which is a big difference. But let's go back to the ninth inning just for a moment. If you filter the data and look only at the top 5 closers from the 2008 to the 2023 seasons, based on number of saves, the average run scored off of a leadoff walk is about 0.6, and the average run scored off of leadoff singles is about 0.34. So that's like a huge difference, right? Which I just thought was interesting. So for good closers, a leadoff walk is way worse than a leadoff single, even though in the ninth inning overall, leadoff singles are usually worse. So if we have good closers on our team, maybe we should be looking out for something else. I mean, obviously we can all see that's almost a 50% difference, which I think that's massive. And I feel like a lot of us probably would have no idea or would never notice that when just watching a game, which shows the importance of doing these kind of analysis. And the other thing that I wanted to look at is the top 3 pitching teams overall. So this is not just the ninth inning, this is all innings. And unsurprisingly, the top 3 pitching teams based on the lowest ERA from the 2008 to the 2023 season were the 2022 Dodgers, the 2022 Astros, and the 2015 Cardinals. And you get a scoring difference of 0.59 for leadoff walks to 0.71 for leadoff singles. So if you have a good team, then you should really be watching out for leadoff singles rather than leadoff walks. Which again, as a Cubs fan, not a problem for me because our pitching is terrible, but that's okay. We're gonna work on that. And again, kind of looking at like the opposite, we have the bottom pitching teams, which again, unsurprisingly, when I was looking it up, I was like, oh, I wonder who the top pitching teams are going to be and who the lowest pitching teams are going to be. And when I saw it, I was like, yeah, that makes complete sense. Like I do remember them being terrible that year. And so for the worst or the bottom 3 pitching teams, that was the 2021 Orioles, the 2023 Rockies, and the 2020 Tigers. And they have averages showing that leadoff walks are way worse and leadoff singles are way better, right? So 1.32 run score off of an inning starting with a leadoff walk versus 1.21 run score off of an inning starting with a leadoff single. So if we have a bad team that year, you really should be looking out for leadoff walks. Next, I want to look at just the starters, right? So we looked at closers and now let's look at starters. So I looked at the top 5 starters from 2008 to 2023, again, based on lowest ERA. And those are Kershaw, DeGrom, Sale, Scherzer, and Cole. Again, I'm sure nobody's surprised that those are the names that are the top 5 pitchers. And for them, leadoff walks are way worse than leadoff singles, right? I also think it's interesting when you look at the top pitchers and the top teams, just how much lower their outcomes are, right? So like let's go back to the top pitching teams. On average, how many runs are scoring in an inning starting with a leadoff walk or a leadoff single? Around like 0.65, right? Versus the bottom pitching teams, it's almost double that or more than double that. So I also think that's an interesting thing to look at. So I'm not really sure why it is that, hold on, sorry, something weird's going on with my computer. Oh, sorry guys. Okay, there we go. Is that still working for everyone? Sorry, it like crashed out on my end. Yes, we can all see that. Yes, okay, perfect. Anyway, so I thought it was an interesting dichotomy, and I'm not really sure why it is the case. So if anybody has any ideas as to why the top pitchers in the league leadoff walks are better, and then the bottom pitching in the league leadoff single, like all the different differences, I would love to know if anybody has an answer to why that might be the case. And the last comparison that I looked at was a more local one. So I'm hoping there's a few Red Sox fans in the room today. I figured that might be a lot of people's teams. And for the Red Sox, it looks like it's pretty much exactly equal from 2008 to 2023. Leadoff singles score about 0.93 runs in an inning, and leadoff walks score about 0.94 runs in an inning. So again, pretty equal. For Red Sox fans, you shouldn't be too worried about either one. But as you can see, there are millions of different ways to analyze all of this data, right? And I could do it by a specific pitcher, team, inning, anything. So if anybody has any questions afterwards or wants me to look up a specific team or something, let me know, because there's millions of interesting things that I can't share all of them with everyone. But I think what's really important to see here is that I started with a question and I thought I was going to get one answer, right? But that's really not what happened. It's now we get to have this whole conversation about how cool leadoff walks versus leadoff singles are. And it lets us have something to talk about in the middle of March, which we're close to baseball season, but we're not there yet. Like we don't have as much to talk about as we might in the middle of like June or July, right? So I think what's really important is that statistics give us something to talk about, even in the off season, even, when we maybe don't have anything else to talk about because we're sad because baseball season isn't happening right now. So yeah, I don't know. I just think, first of all, it's interesting that there's overall no difference. And I think it's cool that we get to sit here and we get to talk about it for so long. And I think, what really has taught me the place that statistics have in baseball is this, right? It's not about overshadowing the game. It's about giving us something more to do with it. And I'm reminded of probably my favorite baseball quote of all time, and it's from the movie Bull Durham, which I'm sure we've all seen. And the quote is, "The only church that truly feeds the soul day in and day out is the church of baseball." And I love that quote. I just think it's so cute. And I really think that embodies exactly what I'm trying to say here. It's like we have endless stories and endless things to talk about because of the statistics and the numbers. So yeah, I hope everybody enjoyed my presentation and let me know if you guys have any specific questions or anything.
What was the line after that Annie said? I've tried them all and none of them just seem to work. Something like that.
Exactly. No, she says it's like in the opening monologue, and
Yeah.
she's like, well, I also think it's funny because in that monologue, she's like, there's 108 beads in a Catholic rosary and 108 stitches on a baseball. When I heard that, I gave Jesus a chance. And I was like, I love that. That's a great quote.
You just took the word right out of my mouth. That's exactly where I was going with that.
Mhm.
Bailey, I got to tell you, they're lining up for you already with questions and whatnot. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you have a question for our presenter tonight, Bailey Hall, go down to the bottom of the screen and hit the react button. Once you do that, you're going to see another button marked raise hand. raise your hand. We'll get you in line to ask questions of our presenter, Bailey Hall, tonight. And we've got a bunch of them already. Buckle up. You ready, Bailey?
Yes, I am.
All right, here we go. Alex Stace, you're up. Go, man. How you doing?
It was great, Bailey. Really good. I guess I would. I realize you're an Astros fan, but I think I would like to hear about your college plans. But if you don't want to go immediately, I will get your Dipoto replaced. By the end of the week, and you can come out here and do that and be the GM.
Thank you.
Are you a senior now?
Yes, I'm a senior now. I think my parents would probably kill me if I didn't go to college. So thank you for the offer, but I am going to have to do that first. But I don't know where I'm going to college yet. I will know probably within the next month or so. But I might be near the New Hampshire area, possibly. I applied to some schools in like New York and Massachusetts because I hate the heat and I want to go up there. And I'm going to major in statistics. So hopefully I can keep going with a lot of the baseball analytics stuff.
Please keep us posted on that. I guess my thought, and it's super interesting, and you really presented it well, is did you think about sorting it, I guess, by innings? I think I would think about first through sixth inning, where the starter is usually there, and then the seventh through ninth, maybe the fifth inning, given the way the pitchers you're using now, but 1 through 5, where the starter is there, and then generally 6 through 9, where the starter is not there.
Mm-hmm.
And the extra innings thing is, I think, skewed by the ghost runner, as you said. And that's one cut that I think is super interesting. And you get more data if you lump the 5 innings together than you do by just using the 1 inning at a time. So that's suggestion 1. And then suggestion 2, which I think is interesting, is did you think about looking at innings with a lot of strikeouts and walks and innings without? I mean, like you would say, a lot of strikeouts, a lot of walks, not many strikeouts, not many walks. Like you could take those data sets and kind of cut them a little finer just based on that, because I think the fundamental thinking of why the walk is worse is, I think, because people think you just gave them something and they didn't earn it, and the hit is something earned. But I do think that there are some pitchers who walk a lot of people and so on. So I think dividing it along walks and strikeouts would be another subset that I think would be interesting personally.
I have thought about that. The strikeout data is way older than walk data, which is kind of interesting. So I might be able to do more with strikeout data, but that is one of the next things that I want to do. And I also think along with thinking about, like the Greg Maddux and like the Kyle Hendricks type of pitcher that is more of like a around the edges type, they're going to walk people more, obviously. And so I think that really gets into the question of like framing and like who's a good catcher and who's not, because I think we don't really have good statistics around catching performance. So yeah, I think those are really good points, and that's like one of the next things that I'm hoping to do with this analysis.
Yeah, and even if you just stuck with the walks and the singles, like, does the leadoff walk lead to more walks? Does the leadoff
like
single lead
follows.
to more singles, right?
Yeah.
And is it predictive of the future? Yeah. And I think anyway, that's super, super interesting. And I'm sure I'm afraid of computer science too, but the data set I'm sure is very robust, and I look forward to seeing 2.0, even though 1.0 is amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Also about the like 1st through 5th or 6th, and then like 6th through 9th, that will take me like 2 seconds to do. So I can send that to Bruce and he can send it over to you, and then I'll let you know on that question, because that's a good one.
Cool. Thank you.
That'd be great. All right. So I'm going to apologize to Troy now because I can't quite remember how to pronounce his last name correctly. Troy Olszewski, did I get it right?
Close enough for government work, my mother used to say. You were saying about why the walks for top pitchers seem to be worse. You're probably too young to remember Mo Rivera, but he never walked anybody. So I'm figuring and this is generally true, the best pitchers limit what is outside of their control, so they don't walk a lot of guys to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
If they're walking guys, they're having a bad day, probably. I think that largely explains, if you haven't looked into it, all right, I think that largely explains the discrepancy.
I think it's also interesting to look at like the type of pitcher too, because I wonder, like, maybe there's more good pitchers that are like fastball pitchers, right? Versus like the type that kind of are around the edges and maybe walk people more. So I think that could also
Nowadays,
correlate,
with Maddox didn't actually walk that many guys despite nibbling at the corners.
Right. I mean, well, that's because he was really good. But that type of pitcher could influence it, could
Oh,
make
ground ball versus fly ball pitchers. That would be interesting.
That's another good one.
Interesting to see how some of our members are looking at your data and your presentation, Bailey, and springboarding off that and shooting in how many different directions for you already. And we've only been at this for what, 25 minutes, a half an hour. It's kind of interesting to see how this is evolving.
That's the point. It's like stats give us something to talk about. Endless possibilities of what analysis we could come up with next.
You're spot on. It's one of the things that I've said countless numbers of times about baseball. The best part of it is how it brings us together to talk about so many different subsets in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just another one. And as you can see, you've sparked an awful lot of thought amongst our members this evening, especially Ken Clausen, who's got a question for you now. Ken.
Hey, thank you, Bailey. Good presentation. Ed Denta, one of our chapter members, was at SABR with you, and he brought you up, and I immediately said walks. Longtime coach, high school ball in Florida, and you're in Texas. Do you do the stats for your high school team? Have you tracked it?
Yes, so I do. I must say, I love my high school team. It was sort of an adjustment to go from only watching Major League Baseball to watching high school baseball. So it was hard at first to figure out. So basically, for my high school team, I do pitch count. I also do like type of pitch. And from that, I look at walks and singles after the game. That takes a little longer, so I can't do that in game. But it becomes really interesting to see the correlation between certain types of pitches and being more likely to become a walk versus a single and that kind of thing. So yeah, once the season's over, the season like just started, but once the season's over, I'm hoping to do an expanded version of this presentation, but with high school statistics, because I think that could be really interesting if there's like a complete opposite in high school or not, or something like that. So yeah, I don't know. Those are the statistics that I usually do for high school.
Just your gut reaction. Mine has always been like, I was 10 years a head high school coach and a pitching coach for a few other years. Leadoff walks worth about a run and a half in high school. And here in Florida and Texas is probably the same high level of ball 1 through 9. There's great players everywhere. There's, what Northern scouts tell me this is like watching small college baseball from where they scout.
Definitely.
So it's about a run and a half, is what I tell my pitchers.
Yeah.
Pitch strike percentage is a huge part of it. Obviously, the 8th and 9th, if you lock the leadoff hitter, you're coming out of the game. So, that kind of explains that discrepancy.
Yeah, I think also what's interesting about high school, and honestly, like I think it's really fun to watch it because of this, is leadoff walks become worse because everyone steals bases. Everyone steals. I mean, like the catchers very often aren't as accurate as the catchers you see in Major League Baseball. So their throws are all over the place when they're trying to throw to second. And if you put someone on first, in 2 pitches, they're on third. So I think that's also an interesting thing that we don't really see in the majors. And I think that also kind of contributes to the reason why everybody thinks leadoff walks are so much worse, because it's like, it feels like really giving up a triple. You know what I mean? So yeah, so that's also an interesting thing. But I agree with your 1.5 runs per leadoff walk. I agree with that.
Bailey, what are some of the adjustments you had to make between watching high school ball and Major League ball? I mean, I was interested in that comment.
I think when I watch a Major League game, or even I watch a lot more, or in person, I watch a lot more AAA games because I work at the AAA, the Dell Diamond, which is the Round Rock Express, and Austin doesn't have a Major League team. So that's the only thing that I can regularly watch. But even with that, like telling the types of pitches is pretty easy. And I feel like most people would agree. the curveball is curvy, the fastball is fast, slider, curve, like, everybody knows what the pitches look like because the pitches are always amazing. When you go to high school and you're trying to tell if that pitch was a fastball or if this pitch was a curveball, but the pitcher is a freshman and has never really pitched before except for like in middle school, it becomes way harder to tell what they're trying to throw. And that affects all the data, right? So then I have to go talk to the catcher and say, okay, like what sign, what were you calling? So I'm trying to learn all the signs and everything because what they're trying to do might not be what actually comes out of their hand when they're pitching. And the other thing is, sorry, 1 second. The other thing is that I go to a public school. Maybe in private school, they have more money to spend on umpires, but we have one ump in a game, maybe two. So sometimes there's someone behind home plate and like kind of out by second, but a lot of times it's just one guy out by second and he's trying to tell everything, right? So the strike zone looks very, very different, which is again an adjustment because people, depending on the ump, can get walked a lot that game if he thinks the strike zone is really small or not, or the opposite. So I think it's just like it's much less accurate than Major League Baseball, which is to be expected, but was still sort of like a shocker when I started doing it.
Very interesting. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Let's go to Craig Garrettson. Craig, how you doing tonight, my friend? What's going on there?
I'm good. So I have actually a non-statistical question for Bailey, or maybe you could do some statistical analysis on this. But Bailey, you're probably one of the few SABR members who's younger than Jackson Holliday. Actually, on this call, we may all be older than Matt Holliday. But I'm wondering how, especially in light of our 500 membership drive thing that's going on, how can we appeal to younger people to join SABR?
Oh, there's a great question.
I think that is an amazing question. In my like ideal life, that's like my PhD dissertation in 10 years or whatever, because I think this question is so important. First of all, I want to say that I don't think baseball is dying. I don't think baseball is boring. I don't think nobody who's young cares about baseball. So I just want to start there. And I feel like that's a very common perception. And I don't think that's true. I think what's hard about the way that baseball is progressing is a lot of the fun things about it. Stealing bases, like what else? Like just seeing hits happen all the time, right? I don't want to see a pop fly that's like on the track. That's not interesting. It either needs to be a home run or you need to put it in play, right? And I think a lot of that has been taken away by statistics. And I think it was like 2015, 2016 when they put in like the launch angle stuff into all the stadiums. And I think that was one of the worst things that's ever happened to baseball because now everybody's swinging for the fences and that's like not how it should be. But I think what people don't realize is that that is not the case in high school, in college, and in a lot of the lower level leagues, right? Like when I watch high school, every inning there's 4 people on base. Every inning there's 12 hits or whatever it is because it's just less accurate. So I think what we as baseball fans need to kind of change our mindset about is what we want to watch. So all the high school games that I go to, stands are packed because people care and people think it's interesting to watch. Same with college. I live right by UT and people go to the UT baseball games all the time. And I think it's exactly like college football. I mean, so many people watch college football. It's not just about the NFL anymore. And I think that's what people need to think about when they think about baseball. We, as baseball fans, need to care about things other than just Major League Baseball. And I think the thing to get kids into it is to lean into the statistical aspect of everything, but using it in the right way, right? So none of that launch angle stuff that's like changing the game, but doing it how we're doing it right now, talking about it, giving us something to like think about, those types of things. So I don't think it's about like the bigger picture things. I think it's about small changes in mindset and what we're watching. Yeah, I hope that answered the question.
That's great. Thanks.
one of the members in the chat, once you got talking, Bailey, his response was preach. That was a perfect answer. That was a perfect answer. Buckle up. Our next contestant, ladies and gentlemen, it's Joe Ross. Joe, what's going on, my man? How you doing?
I was doing fine until you gave me that introduction.
Oh, knock it off. You knew it was coming.
Yeah, I actually did. Bailey, this was a fantastic job.
Thank you.
As a person who spent years as a college administrator, I would love to have you as a student in the school I was
Aw.
working at.
Thank you.
So if that doesn't go too much to your head, you can tell your father that.
Okay.
The thing that, Bruce, cut it out. The thing that you can't measure, in my opinion, is the psychological effect of a pitcher giving up a walk. A hit, okay, people get hits all the time, but when you give up a leadoff walk, that's a psychological killer, I think. And it didn't show up in your stats, but in fact, I think that plays a role. The other thing I want to do, I want to change a little bit from that. When you go to a Round Rock game, do you listen to the play-by-play?
Well, okay, first thing, I agree. The mental well, I mean, I don't know. I'm not a major league pitcher, but I agree. I feel like the mental aspect definitely does play a big part. But I think doing analysis like this, which shows that there's actually not a difference, even though mentally it might feel like there is, can do a lot for pitching coaches. I mean, over half of baseball is just your mentality about it, right? So using the
Absolutely.
stats to like, I guess, calm the pitchers a little bit to be like, it's not that bad. Like, it is not worse than giving up a leadoff single. I honestly think that could make a big difference. So I definitely agree about the mental aspect. And I think that's why most people think that it's worse. As for the second thing, the play-by-play, my job at the AAA stadium is not very glamorous. I work the front gate, so I'm like ticket taking, and it's kind of stressful. So no, I'm not listening to the play-by-play of all the games because I'm trying to make sure that nobody's like bringing something into the stadium that they're not supposed to be bringing in. But I wish I could. And I try basically from like the third inning to like the seventh inning, I can watch the game. And then at the beginning and at the end, when I have to like really be manning the gate, then I kind of miss some stuff. But yeah.
Do you see Mike Capps at all?
Yes, he no longer works for the Round Rock Express, but I used to see him. He worked there. I think last season was his last season. They'd have a new announcer now who's also great. Mike Capps was, what I liked about him is that you always would see him, even when he wasn't doing like press related stuff, you would always see him down with the players, teaching them, like, giving words of wisdom and all that kind of stuff. So I think he really is like a baseball personality, and he does a lot more than just what you hear on the radio.
Well, he does a feature called Today in Baseball History.
I've listened. Yeah.
Oh, I write that. That's mine.
Oh, really? You do?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
I mean, that's my thing. And I started it because of Mike.
Really?
When he was up here, actually, he worked for the Atlantic City Surf. And when they came to Nashua, I was the official scorer, but I was also the color guy for him.
Really? I did not know that.
Yeah, because as you know, the minor leagues don't send a color guy on the road.
No, they don't.
They use them at home, but not on the road. So when he came to Nashua, I acted as his color guy. At the same time, I was being the official scorer, and he had a problem finding enough stuff. And I said, gee, that's something I can get interested in. And I've been doing it ever since, which is now a whole number of years. I hate to tell you how many, since I'm way too old. I make Bruce look like a kid. So, that's me. You want to know more about that? Let me know, because I would love to have someone like you working with me on that.
I would love to. If I will email Bruce, and I'm sure he'll connect us.
Okay, Bruce, you can forward it to me and I will get in touch with
Perfect.
Bailey.
Perfect.
I'm going to tell you the only thing I didn't like, and this is my academic side, drop the word like from your conversation.
Yes, I know. My dad also says that all the time. I need to get better.
Is a way of thinking, but the fact is a dead second is better than the word like.
You're
so
right.
Anytime you're going to say like, just don't say anything and you'll be fine.
Okay, good advice. Yes, my dad tells me that all the time. So I need to work on that.
Bruce, I'm done.
It's a tough crew. Mark Hoyle, for all that is good, please save me here.
Tough act to follow here. My question actually kind of ties into what Joe brought up. Is there any statistical information on what the next batter does after the walk or the single? How many home runs are hit?
Good question. Yes, there is. StatCast has like a really cool like filter thing. So you can basically say like what at bat are you looking at in the inning? So you could filter it to like second at bat, and then you can filter it so that the first at bat is a leadoff walk or a leadoff single. And then from that you would be able to tell like what happens for the batter after that. I don't know what happens, but you could do that. So maybe that'll be my next project.
Yeah, inherently, you always heard that on the broadcast. The guys who are always around the plate and don't walk guys are usually the guys who give up a lot of home runs too.
Yeah.
So if he walks a guy, it's psychologically, like Joe said, does that mess with him a little bit? Who knows?
Right.
Great presentation, though. I loved it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dixie Tarango, you're up. How you doing, Dix?
I'm doing fine.
Good.
Bailey, a fine presentation. Very interesting.
Thank you.
I'm wondering how much confusion and how much angst you could add to this whole program if you added in leadoff errors in the field or leadoff hit batsmen.
Good question. I think so. Again, on StatCast, you can filter it so that there's like hit by pitch included and like wild pitches included. And this data does include hit by pitch for leadoff walks. So I probably should have said that earlier. That is kind of interesting. I don't know about fielding errors. I'm not sure if StatCast, I'm sure you could figure that out somewhere. I'm not sure if you could do that on StatCast, but that would be an interesting question to see how errors make a difference. Because I also think that's another cool thing about the high school versus Major League Baseball thing. Errors, it's like every other play is an error in high school versus Major League Baseball where it seems like it doesn't happen as often. So I don't know. That would be a cool question.
It would be interesting to try and figure out the pitcher's mentality by either walking a person he shouldn't walk or by watching his shortstop mess up a perfectly good play.
Right, exactly. I honestly think that mentally the shortstop thing might be worse for the pitcher in the next batter. I don't know.
This has been quite a conversation. Wow. Interesting how your presentation sparked half a dozen other avenues to go down to expand upon it and find more data. Very interesting stuff. Nice work.
Thank you.
I think the crowd here tonight is thrilled with you, Bailey. I'm sorry I stepped on you.
No worries. Yeah, I don't know. Thank you guys for having me. I had a lot of fun, and I always like to hear questions and like what everyone's thinking, because I think everyone's mind works differently, which is why these analysis projects are so interesting, because it's like every time I talk about them, I come up with different ways to look at it from you guys. So thank you.
Alex stays in the chat, says Bailey Hall of Fame. So there's your new nickname, I guess.
Thanks.
Hey, let's do this again on Wednesday, shall we? Wednesday, March 12th, join SABR's East Coast Cooperative as we bring you SABR member Jeffrey Orens as he discusses his new book, Selling Baseball, How Superstars George Wright and Albert Spalding Impacted Sports in America. The registration link is in the SABR events calendar at sabr.org/events or in our meeting booklet published each Monday in the Monday Message newsletter. If you're subscribed to our automatic service, you'll get your join the meeting link tomorrow. And finally, if you're a baseball fan watching on YouTube and you like what you see, please like this video and subscribe to our channel to be alerted to each of our weekly uploads. And if you are not yet a member, you need to join the Society for American Baseball Research, the premier baseball community. Offering an amazing baseball buffet of options to explore your fandom, SABR boasts more than 35 different research communities, over 80 regional chapters, and innumerable opportunities to connect with baseball minds across the world, just like Bailey. For more information, go to sabr.org today. Bailey Hall, you are spectacular. Thank you very much for doing this.
You too, Bruce.
I appreciate you. Let's get everybody out of here. We'll see you all Wednesday night. Have a good night, everybody.